Jake Morrison stood at the window of Haven Point Station and watched the stars. He had been a diplomat for 3 years now, but he still felt like a soldier. That was what he used to be before his wife died in the mining accident on Mars. After that, he needed a change. He needed to do something different with his life. Haven Point was a huge space station that circled Neptune. It was where humans met aliens from all over the galaxy. There were many different species here. Some looked almost human. Others looked like nothing Jake had ever imagined. The strangest ones were the Zirathi. The Zirathi looked like giant insects. They had hard shells that shined in different colors. They had 6 legs and 4 arms. Their faces had big compound eyes and moving mouthparts that clicked when they talked. Most humans found them scary at first. Jake had learned not to judge by appearances. Today was a big day. The Zirathi Queen Mother was coming to the station. Her name was Velshara, and she had ruled the Zirathi Empire for 800 years. Yes, 800. The Zirathi lived much longer than humans. Their queens lived longest of all. Ambassador Carlos Rodriguez was nervous. Jake could tell because Carlos kept checking his uniform and adjusting his tie. Carlos was Jake's boss, and he was a good man. But he worried too much about following rules and making everything perfect. Everything must go perfectly today, Carlos said for the 10th time. Queen Velshara is very important. The Zirathi control 12 star systems. We need to stay on good terms with them. Jake nodded. He understood politics, but he also believed in being honest. Sometimes that got him in trouble. Dr. Lisa Chen walked into the room. She was a scientist who studied alien biology. She was also one of Jake's closest friends on the station. The Zirathi ship just arrived, she said. They'll dock in 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, Queen Velshara entered the station. She was bigger than the other Zirathi. Her shell was a deep purple color with gold markings. She moved with slow, careful grace. Behind her came 6 guards and several attendants. And with them was a younger Zirathi. That must be Princess Kirala, Lisa whispered to Jake. The queen's daughter. The princess was smaller than her mother. Her shell was lighter purple with silver markings. She looked around the station with what seemed like curiosity. Jake reminded himself that reading Zirathi body language was hard. Humans often got it wrong. Ambassador Rodriguez stepped forward and bowed. He gave a long speech about friendship and cooperation between humans and Zirathi. He talked about peace and understanding. His words were nice, but they felt empty to Jake. They were the kind of things diplomats always said. When Carlos finished, Queen Velshara spoke. Her voice came through a translator device. It sounded mechanical but clear. Ambassador Rodriguez, I thank you for your kind words. I come today with an important request. Everyone waited. The room was very quiet. I wish for my daughter, Princess Kirala, to live among humans for 1 standard year. This would be a cultural exchange. She would learn your ways. You would learn ours. Jake saw Carlos's eyes light up. This was a huge opportunity. Having a Zirathi princess live on the station would strengthen the relationship between their peoples. It would be good for everyone's careers too, but Jake felt worried. Something about this didn't feel right. That night, Jake studied everything he could find about Zirathi culture. He read old reports and research papers. He watched videos of Zirathi ceremonies. The more he read, the more worried he became. In Zirathi society, everything was about hierarchy. Everyone had a place. Everyone knew their role. The queen was at the top. Below her were the nobles. Below them were the workers. Below them were the drones. No one ever moved from one level to another. You were born into your place, and you stayed there. When a Zirathi royal offered a family member to another group, it meant something specific. It was either a way to form a marriage alliance or it was a test. Jake was pretty sure this was a test. But what kind of test? And what happened if humans failed? The next morning, Jake went to see Carlos. Sir, I think we need to be careful about this. In Zirathi culture, I know what you're going to say, Carlos interrupted. You think this might be some kind of test. Maybe it is. But Jake, we can't refuse. This is too important. We just need to make sure we do everything right. But what does right mean to them? Jake asked. What if we guess wrong? Carlos sighed. Then we'll deal with it. But we have to try. Now I'm assigning you to be Princess Kirala's main liaison. You'll be responsible for her safety and helping her adjust to life here. Jake wanted to argue, but he knew it wouldn't help. He was stuck with this job now. The formal acceptance ceremony happened 2 days later. The main hall was decorated with flags from both Earth and the Zirathi homeworld. Hundreds of people attended. Human officials, Zirathi guards, scientists, and journalists all crowded into the space. Carlos gave another long speech. He talked about how honored humans were to host the princess. He promised to take good care of her. He said this exchange would bring their peoples closer together. Then it was Jake's turn to speak. He walked to the podium. He looked at all the important people watching him. He looked at Queen Velshara. He looked at Princess Kirilla. Jake decided to be honest. Your Majesty, Princess Kirilla, I accept the responsibility of being the princess's liaison during her stay here. I will do my best to keep her safe and help her understand our culture, but I need to be clear about something. He saw Carlos go pale, but Jake continued. We humans are not going to change who we are to match what you might expect. We have our own ways of doing things. Some of them might seem strange or even wrong to you. We're loud. We argue with each other. We don't always follow rules. We make mistakes. But that's who we are. If Princess Kirilla is going to understand humans, she needs to see the real us, not some polite version we put on for guests. The room was silent. Jake could feel people staring at him. Carlos looked like he wanted to disappear, but then something unexpected happened. Queen Velshara's mouth parts clicked rapidly. Lisa had told Jake that this was a Zirathi laugh. The Queen was amused. Commander Morrison, the Queen said, you are the first human to speak to me with such directness. Most try to tell me what they think I want to hear. This is refreshing. Perhaps you are the right choice to guide my daughter after all. After the ceremony, Queen Velshara asked to speak with Jake privately. They went to a small meeting room. Just the two of them, with Lisa there to help with translation if needed. You are suspicious of my motives, Velshara said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Your Majesty, Jake admitted. In your culture, this kind of exchange usually means something specific. I'm trying to understand what you really want. The Queen was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke. Commander, I will tell you the truth. My empire is dying. Not quickly. Not obviously. But we are dying nonetheless. We have not had a new idea in 300 years. We have not created anything truly original in 500 years. We follow the old ways because they are comfortable. But comfortable is not the same as alive. Jake listened carefully. Humans are young. Your species only reached the stars 70 years ago. But in that short time, you have done remarkable things. You adapt. You change. You find new solutions to old problems. I want my daughter to learn how you do this. I want her to bring that knowledge back to our people. And if she doesn't learn anything, if we fail? Jake asked. Velshara's eyes glittered. Then I will know that humans are just another rigid species hiding behind pretty words about cooperation. And my people will continue on our slow path to irrelevance. Jake understood now. This wasn't just about cultural exchange. It was about the future of an entire civilization. No pressure. Princess Kirilla moved into her new quarters on the civilian level of Haven Point. The rooms were nice, clean, comfortable, but they felt wrong to her. Everything felt wrong. At home, servants brought her everything before she asked. Food appeared when she was hungry. Her chambers were cleaned while she slept. Orders were given with a simple gesture. Here she had to do things herself. She had to ask for help. It was uncomfortable and strange. The first morning, she waited in her room for someone to bring her breakfast. No one came. After an hour, her hunger became too much. She contacted Jake Morrison on the communication device. Commander Morrison, my morning meal has not been delivered. There was a pause. Then Jake's voice came through, sounding confused. Your meal? Princess, you need to go to the cafeteria and get food yourself, or use the food printer in your quarters. Did someone not show you how it works? Kirilla felt heat rising in her body. Among her people, this was anger. I am a princess of the Zirathi Empire. I do not fetch my own food. Well, here you do, Jake said simply. I'll come by in 10 minutes and show you how the food printer works. He ended the call. Kirilla stood in her room shocked. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever refused her anything. She considered calling her mother to complain about this disrespectful human, but she didn't. Her mother had sent her here to learn. Maybe this was part of the lesson. Jake arrived and showed her the food printer. It was a machine that could make many different kinds of food. You just selected what you wanted on a screen and it prepared the meal. Simple, easy. But Kirala had never used such a device before. "Try it," Jake said. Kirala looked at the screen. There were hundreds of options. Foods from dozens of worlds. She selected something that looked appropriate for Xyrathi biology. The machine hummed and produced a bowl of protein paste. "There you go," Jake said. "Now you can eat whenever you want. You don't have to wait for anyone." The idea was both frightening and exciting. She didn't have to wait for anyone. She could choose for herself. Over the next few days, more conflicts came. Kirala tried to establish proper hierarchy among the humans who worked near her quarters. She wanted them to acknowledge her status. She wanted them to bow when they saw her. She wanted them to speak to her with proper titles and respect. The humans were polite, but they didn't bow. They called her princess sometimes, but just as often they called her Kirala, like she was just another person. A maintenance worker named Pete even argued with her about the temperature settings in her room. "You can't have it that cold," Pete said. "It messes up the climate control for the whole level." "I am a princess. I require these conditions," Kirala insisted. Pete shrugged. "Yeah, well, I'm a climate engineer, and I'm telling you it can't work like that. How about we meet in the middle? I'll make it cooler than standard, but not so cold it breaks everything." He walked away before she could respond. Kirala was furious. This human had just told a princess no, and walked away like it was nothing. She contacted her mother that night. She explained everything. The food printer. The lack of servants. The humans who didn't show proper respect. She expected her mother to be outraged. She expected Velshara to punish Commander Morrison for his failure to treat her properly. Instead, her mother said something unexpected. "Daughter, you are there to learn how humans think and act. They do not have royalty in the way we do. They do not automatically give respect based on birth. You want to understand them? Then you must experience life as they do, without the protections of your title. But mother, I am a princess. That is who I am. Here, you are just Kirala. Learn what that means." The call ended. Kirala sat alone in her quarters, feeling confused and hurt, but also curious. What did it mean to be just Kirala? She had been a princess her entire life. She didn't know how to be anything else. Dr. Lisa Chen became an unexpected friend during those difficult first weeks. Lisa was kind but honest. She helped Kirala understand human culture without making her feel stupid. "The thing about humans," Lisa explained one day, "is that we believe everyone has value as an individual, not because of who their parents are or what position they hold. We value people for their choices and actions. But how can everyone be equal?" Kirala asked. "Some people are clearly better than others, smarter, stronger, more capable. Better at different things, yes. But that doesn't make anyone worth more as a person. Pete, the maintenance worker, is better at fixing climate systems than our ambassador. Does that make Pete more valuable or less valuable? We think everyone has different skills and everyone matters." This concept was very strange to Kirala. In Xyrathi society, your value was determined by your caste. A queen was worth more than a noble. A noble was worth more than a worker. A worker was worth more than a drone. This was simply how things were, how things had always been. But humans didn't think that way. One evening, Jake took Kirala to the station's recreation center. It was a large space where off-duty personnel went to relax. Humans were everywhere, doing different activities. Some played games. Some exercised. Some just talked and laughed together. The noise was overwhelming. Everyone talked at once. Music played from somewhere. People shouted and laughed. It was chaos. Kirala wanted to leave immediately. "Just watch for a while," Jake suggested. She watched. She saw a high-ranking security officer playing a game with a young cafeteria worker. The officer wasn't acting superior. They joked and competed like equals. She saw people arguing passionately about something called the best pizza toppings, and then laughing together seconds later. She saw a scientist helping a janitor fix a broken chair. No one seemed to care about rank or position. They were just people spending time together. Pete walked over. "Hey, princess! Want to learn how to play pool?" Kirala didn't know what pool was, but Pete was already leading her to a table with colored balls on it. He showed her how to hold the stick, how to aim, how to hit the white ball so it would hit the other balls. She was terrible at it. The balls went everywhere except where she wanted. Pete laughed, but not in a mean way. He gave her tips, encouraged her, treated her like any other beginner. When she finally got one ball in a pocket, Pete cheered like she had won a great victory. Other humans nearby clapped. For a moment, Kerala forgot she was a princess. She was just someone learning a new game, someone having fun. It felt good. Later that night, she asked Jake a question that had been bothering her. Why are humans so comfortable with chaos? Everything here is disorganized. People argue. They disagree. They do things differently from each other. How do you get anything done? Jake thought for a moment. We get things done because of the chaos, not despite it. When people can disagree, they share different ideas. When they're free to do things their own way, they find creative solutions. Yeah, it's messy, but messy works for us. In my culture, such disorder would be seen as dangerous. We have rules for everything. Everyone knows their place and their duties. And how's that working for you? Jake asked gently. Kerala couldn't answer. Because the truth was, it wasn't working well at all. Her people were stagnating. They hadn't created anything new in centuries. They followed the old ways because change was forbidden, and now they were slowly dying because of it. A few weeks later, Haven Point had a crisis. A small meteorite hit the station's water recycling system. It wasn't a huge disaster, but it needed to be fixed quickly. Kerala watched how humans responded. First, Ambassador Rodriguez called a formal meeting. All the department heads came. They spent hours discussing the proper procedure. Who should be in charge? What protocols should they follow? What forms needed to be filled out? While they talked, Jake gathered a small group. An engineer named Kate Murphy, a programmer called Danny Park, a botanist who everyone called Raj. They didn't wait for permission. They didn't follow proper channels. They just started working on the problem. Kerala followed them. She watched as they took apart 3 different broken systems and used the parts to build a new solution. It wasn't pretty. It probably wasn't in any official manual, but it worked. By the time the formal meeting ended, Jake's team had already fixed the problem. This would never happen in Zerathi society. No one would dare solve a problem without proper authorization. No one would break protocol. No one would improvise, but humans did. And it worked. That night, Kerala couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about everything she had seen and learned. Humans were messy and chaotic. They argued and disagreed. They broke rules and ignored hierarchy, but they also adapted quickly. They solved problems creatively. They treated each other as equals. Maybe that was their strength. Maybe chaos and order both had value. Maybe her people had focused too much on order and forgotten about adaptation. She was beginning to understand why her mother had sent her here. 3 months passed. Kerala had changed in ways she never expected. She no longer waited for servants to bring her things. She made her own food. She played pool with Pete twice a week. She even started to enjoy the chaotic energy of the recreation center. She and Jake had become friends. Real friends, not the formal relationship between a royal and her guard. They talked about everything. Human history, Zerathi traditions, the future of both their peoples. Jake told her about his wife who died and how he learned to keep going. Kerala told him about the pressure of being born to rule an empire that was slowly falling apart. Late one night, over cups of coffee that Kerala had learned to tolerate, she confessed her biggest fear. My people are dying, Jake, not from war or disease. We're dying because we've stopped growing. We haven't had a new idea in 300 years. Our population is shrinking. Our colonies are empty. We just repeat what we've always done. Why? Jake asked. What's stopping you from changing? Fear, Kerala said quietly. Fear of disorder. Fear of losing control. And our biology makes it worse. When a Zerathi queen has a daughter, that daughter inherits her genetic memories, all the knowledge and experiences of her mother. It sounds wonderful, right? Jake nodded, listening. But it means every new queen thinks like the old queen. We inherit not just memories, but patterns of thought, opinions, biases. Each generation becomes more similar to the last. Innovation dies because new ideas feel wrong to us. They contradict the memories we inherited. That sounds like a prison, Jake said. It is. My mother tried to change things when she was young. But the older queen's memories were too strong. She became like them. And I'm supposed to become like her. That's why she sent me here. She hopes I can learn to think differently before I inherit her memories and become just another copy. Jake understood now. The stakes were even higher than he thought. This wasn't just about one princess learning a different culture. It was about breaking a cycle that had trapped an entire civilization. Then the message came. Queen Velshara was coming to Haven Point for an inspection. She would arrive in 1 week. Ambassador Rodriguez panicked. He called emergency meetings. He ordered everyone to prepare presentations showing how well the cultural exchange was going. Everything had to be perfect, formal, professional. He wanted to impress the Zirathi Queen. Jake argued against this approach. "Sir, I don't think Queen Velshara wants to see a performance. She wants to see if her daughter has actually learned something real. If we just put on a show, we're missing the point. Morrison, I appreciate your input, but this is too important to risk. We're going to do this properly. That means formal ceremonies and scripted presentations. I've already assigned people to write speeches." Jake wanted to keep arguing, but he knew Carlos wouldn't listen. The ambassador was too afraid of offending such an important ally. For the next week, Haven Point was a mess of preparation. People practiced speeches. They rehearsed demonstrations of human Zirathi cooperation. They cleaned every surface until it shined. Everything was planned down to the smallest detail. Kirala watched all this with growing discomfort. This wasn't the real Haven Point she had come to know. This wasn't the chaotic, messy, wonderful place where Pete taught her pool and Jake's team fixed problems without permission. This was a sanitized version. A lie she tried to tell Jake how she felt. "I know," he said, "but Carlos is in charge, not me. We have to follow his plan. This is wrong. My mother will see through it." "Maybe, but what can we do?" Kirala didn't have an answer. Queen Velshara arrived exactly on schedule. She brought a large entourage. Guards, advisors, nobles. They all looked very formal and intimidating in their ceremonial shells. The presentations began immediately. A human scientist talked about advances in xenobiology research. A Zirathi scholar discussed improved translation technology. Everything was polite and professional, and incredibly boring. Kirala sat in her assigned seat, wearing formal royal garments she hadn't touched in months. She felt like she was wearing a costume. This wasn't who she was anymore, but she stayed quiet like a proper princess should. Dr. Lisa Chen sat near Jake. She whispered to him, "Look at Queen Velshara's mandibles. They're completely still. That's a bad sign. She's either bored or disappointed." Jake watched the queen. Lisa was right. Velshara sat motionless, showing no reaction to anything. This wasn't going well. After 3 hours of presentations, Queen Velshara finally spoke. Her voice was cold, formal. "Thank you for these presentations. They are very informative. But I did not come here for information. I came to see my daughter. I came to learn if she has changed." She dismissed everyone except Ambassador Rodriguez, Commander Morrison, and Dr. Chen. The room cleared quickly. Now it was just the humans, Kirala, the queen, and a few Zirathi guards. Velshara turned to Jake. "Commander Morrison, you have been my daughter's primary liaison. I ask you directly, has she learned anything? Has she changed? Or have you simply taught her to perform for visiting royalty?" Before Jake could answer, Princess Kirala stood up. She walked to the center of the room. She faced her mother. Then she spoke in the Zirathi language. Her voice was clear and strong. Dr. Chen translated for the humans, her voice shaking slightly. "Mother, I have changed. I have learned things that contradict the genetic memories you will one day pass to me. I have learned that rigid hierarchy can be a weakness, not a strength. I have learned that disorder and chaos can lead to innovation. I have learned that individuals have value beyond their caste. And I have learned to question authority, even yours." The room went completely silent. Ambassador Rodriguez looked like he might faint. The Zirathi guards clicked their mandibles in shock. What Kirala had just done was unthinkable in their culture. A princess did not challenge her mother. Ever. Queen Velshara's mandibles spread wide. A threat display. Jake tensed, ready for violence. But then something unexpected happened. The queen laughed. It was a clicking, chittering sound that no human had ever heard from a Zirathi before. It was genuine laughter. Surprise. Joy. "Daughter, you have proven what I barely dared to hope. The humans have actually changed you. Not your appearance. Not your words, but your thoughts. Your willingness to challenge even me. This is remarkable." Velshara turned to the humans. "You think I came to see formal presentations? To evaluate your diplomatic skills? No. I came to test if humans could do the impossible. If they could change a Zirathi princess so deeply that she would question her own mother. You have succeeded beyond my expectations." Jake felt relief wash over him. They had passed the test. It was over. But then Velshara continued speaking, and Jake realized it wasn't over at all. It was just beginning. Commander Morrison, my daughter has become something new, something that has never existed before. She is neither fully Zarathi nor human. She has learned your ways, but she cannot simply return to our empire and use this knowledge. Our conservative factions will see her as corrupted, dangerous. She will be isolated, perhaps imprisoned. Her ideas will die with her. Jake didn't like where this was going, so I ask you, Commander Morrison, why won't you accept my daughter? Why won't you take her into your people permanently? Give her the protection of human citizenship. Let her stay here where her new ideas will be valued, not punished. The room exploded with noise. Ambassador Rodriguez started talking rapidly about political impossibility. The Zarathi and the Queen's entourage clicked in shock and outrage. Dr. Chen tried to explain to Jake that what Velshara was asking was unprecedented, impossible. No alien had ever been granted full human citizenship before, but Jake wasn't listening to any of them. He was watching Kirala. She stood frozen, her mandibles trembling slightly. She looked frightened and hopeful at the same time. Queen Velshara raised one of her arms for silence. The room quieted. Let me be clear about what I'm asking. If humans accept my daughter, it would prove that your philosophy of equality and acceptance is not just words. It would prove that you truly believe anyone can choose their own path, regardless of their origin. It would demonstrate that humanity can accept someone fundamentally different as one of their own. She looked directly at Jake. Your ambassador speaks of politics and protocols. These are important, I suppose. But you, Commander Morrison, you understand the real question. Can humanity truly accept someone who is not human? Or is your philosophy limited to your own species? Jake stood there, suddenly aware that everyone was waiting for him to speak. The fate of a princess, maybe the fate of an entire empire, rested on what he said next. He took a deep breath. He thought about everything that had happened over the past 3 months. He thought about Kirala learning to use the food printer, playing pool with Pete, fixing the water system without permission, all the small moments where she had stopped being just a princess and started being herself. And he knew what he had to say. Even if it got him fired, even if it caused a diplomatic incident, he knew the right answer, but before he could speak, Ambassador Rodriguez cut him off. Your Majesty, this is a matter that requires careful consideration. We cannot make such a decision without consulting our government. I request a recess so we can discuss this privately. Velshara's mandibles clicked once. Agreement. Very well. You have until tomorrow morning. Then I will have my answer. One way or another, the meeting ended. As everyone left, Jake caught Kirala's eye. She looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Hope, fear, trust, he didn't know. But he knew one thing for certain. Tomorrow, he was going to give Queen Velshara an answer that would shock everyone in the room. Ambassador Rodriguez called an emergency meeting in his office. Just him, Jake, and Dr. Lisa Chen. Carlos paced back and forth, looking more stressed than Jake had ever seen him. This is a disaster, Carlos said. Granting citizenship to an alien royal? It's political suicide. Earth's government will never approve it. The legal paperwork alone could take years. And what precedent does it set? Every alien species will want the same treatment. Or, Jake said calmly, we show the galaxy that humans actually mean what we say about equality and acceptance. That's easy for you to say. You're not the one who has to explain this to the Secretary General. You're not the one whose career is on the line. You're right, Jake admitted. But I am the one who spent 3 months watching Kirala transform from a rigid princess into someone who thinks for herself. I watched her struggle and grow, and now her own mother is saying that growth will get her punished if she goes home. We can't just abandon her? Dr. Chen spoke up. This isn't really about Kirala, is it? Queen Velshara is forcing us to confront a fundamental question. Do we actually believe in the principles we claim to value? Or are those principles only convenient when we're dealing with other humans? Carlos stopped pacing. He looked at them both. What are you suggesting we do? We can't just say yes without any authority to make that decision. No, Jake agreed. But we can say something else. Something that might be better than yes or no. Before he could explain, Jake left the office. He needed to talk to Kirala first. He needed to know what she actually wanted. He found her in her quarters. She was still wearing the formal royal garments from the meeting, but she looked uncomfortable in them. Like they didn't fit anymore. Can we talk? Jake asked. She gestured for him to sit. They sat in silence for a moment. Finally, Jake asked the question that mattered most. What do you want, Kirala? Not what your mother wants. not what humans or Zyrathi expect. "What do you want?" Kerala was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "I don't want to stop being Zyrathi. I love my people. I love our history and traditions. But I also don't want to go back to being the princess I was before. That version of me felt like a prison. I want to be Zyrathi in a new way. A better way. Can you do that if you go home?" Jake asked gently. "My mother is right. The conservative factions will see me as corrupted. They'll try to isolate me or force me to conform. And when I eventually inherit my mother's genetic memories, those old patterns of thought might overwhelm the new ones I've learned here. I might become just another rigid queen exactly like all the ones before me." She looked at Jake with her large compound eyes. "I'm scared, Jake. I'm challenging thousands of years of tradition. Many of my people will hate me for it. But I've seen what humanity has accomplished by embracing change. I believe my people can do the same. But I need time. Time to grow stronger in these new ideas. Time to figure out how to bring change to my people without destroying them." Jake understood. She wasn't asking to abandon her people. She was asking for space to grow before returning to help them. Time to become strong enough to face the resistance she would encounter. "Okay," Jake said. "Then that's what we'll fight for." The next morning, everyone gathered in the formal chamber again. Queen Velshara sat on one side with her entourage. Ambassador Rodriguez, Jake, and Dr. Chen represented humanity. Princess Kerala sat between them, literally caught between two worlds. Carlos had prepared a careful diplomatic response. Jake had seen it. It was full of phrases like "requires further study" and "pending government approval." It said nothing while sounding official. It was exactly what Jake expected from a career diplomat trying to avoid making a real decision. But Jake wasn't going to let that happen. Before Carlos could begin his prepared statement, Jake stood up. Carlos looked at him in alarm, but Jake was already speaking. "Your Majesty, you asked why we won't accept your daughter. You want to know if humanity's principles are real or just convenient words. I'm going to give you an answer. It's going to shock you." The room went quiet. Everyone stared at Jake. Ambassador Rodriguez looked like he wanted to stop him, but he stayed silent, probably too shocked to move. "We won't accept your daughter," Jake said clearly. "Not because we don't value her. Not because we don't believe in our principles. But because acceptance isn't ours to give." Confusion rippled through both groups. Queen Velshara's mandibles moved slightly. "Curiosity," Jake continued. "In Zyrathi culture, individuals need permission from higher authority to exist in certain ways. You seek acceptance from above. But humanity works differently. We believe every individual has the inherent right to be who they choose to be, not because someone grants them permission, but because that right exists naturally. Kerala doesn't need anyone's permission to be who she is. Not yours, Your Majesty, and not ours. That's the whole point of what she's learned here. She has the right to choose her own path. If that means being a new kind of Zyrathi, she can be that. If it means something else entirely, that's her choice." He looked at Kerala. She was very still, listening to every word. "What I will do is make a promise. I promise to stand with Kerala as she figures out who she wants to be. Not as her superior, not as someone granting her permission, but as her friend and equal. If she wants to stay here and continue learning, she can stay. If she wants to return to your empire and try to change it from within, she can go. If she wants to forge a completely new path between both our peoples, she can do that too. The choice is hers. And whatever she decides, humans will support her, not because we're accepting her into our species, but because we respect her right to choose for herself." Jake sat down. His heart was pounding. He had just gone completely against protocol. He had spoken without authorization. He had probably ended his career, but he felt good about it. Ambassador Rodriguez looked like he had aged 10 years in 10 seconds. The Zyrathi entourage erupted in clicking debates. Dr. Chen was smiling, though she tried to hide it. But Queen Velshara remained perfectly still. Her compound eyes were fixed on Jake. The room gradually quieted as everyone waited for her response. Then Princess Kerala did something extraordinary. She stood up from her seat between the two groups. She walked across the open space, and she stood beside Jake, physically placing herself between her mother and him, not as a barrier. As a bridge. She spoke in the Zyrathi language. Dr. Chen translated. "Mother, Commander Morrison is correct. I have learned many things here, but the most important lesson is this. I don't need permission to grow and change. I need support. I need time. I need space to figure out how to help our people without destroying myself in the process. I want to stay here longer, not to become human, but to become stronger in my new understanding. And then, when I'm ready, I want to return home. I want to show our people that change doesn't mean chaos, that adaptation doesn't mean losing our identity, that we can honor tradition while still growing. But I need you to let me do this my way, not the Zerathi way, not the human way. My way. Queen Velshara remained silent for a long time. Everyone held their breath. Finally she spoke. Commander Morrison, you have shocked me, but not in the way I expected. I came here asking you to accept my daughter because that is how my culture works. We seek approval from higher authority. We need permission to deviate from tradition, but you have shown me that humanity truly operates differently. She stood, her full height impressive even by Zerathi standards. You do not grant permission to exist. You simply acknowledge that all beings have the right to exist on their own terms. This is a profound difference, one that my people have forgotten if we ever knew it. She looked at her daughter. 800 years ago when I was young, I tried to change our empire. I wanted to give our people more freedom, more choice, but I failed. The weight of genetic memories and tradition was too heavy. I became like all the queens before me. But you, my daughter, you have something I never had. You have experienced a different way of thinking before inheriting my memories. You have learned to value choice before learning to fear it. Perhaps you can succeed where I failed. Velshara turned to Ambassador Rodriguez. Ambassador, I propose something unprecedented. Let us create a new status. My daughter will remain Zerathi royalty, but she will also become the first official cultural bridge between our peoples. She will belong to both civilizations without being forced to choose one over the other. Carlos looked confused. Cultural bridge? I don't understand. A person who exists between cultures, Dr. Chen explained excitedly. Someone who can move between both worlds, learning from both, helping them understand each other. It's brilliant. What followed was 3 days of intense negotiation, not about forcing Kirala to choose between being Zerathi or human, but about creating something entirely new, a recognized political status for individuals who exist between cultures. It was complicated. There were legal issues, political concerns, questions about jurisdiction and authority, but slowly an agreement took shape. Princess Kirala would maintain her status as Zerathi royalty, but she would also become the first official cultural bridge, a person who belonged to both civilizations. She would spend time in both societies, learning from both and helping them understand each other. More importantly, the agreement established a precedent. Other species in the Galactic Coalition could now adopt similar programs. Individuals could exist between cultures rather than being forced to assimilate into one or the other. It was a small change in galactic law, but it represented a massive shift in how species could interact. On the day Queen Velshara departed, she had one final private conversation with Jake. You shocked me, Commander Morrison, she said. Not with your answer to my question, but with the realization that I was asking you to solve a problem that only we Zerathi could solve for ourselves. You simply gave us permission to try. I didn't give you permission, Jake corrected gently. I just reminded you that you don't need it. The Queen's mandibles clicked in amusement. Yes, that is exactly the lesson humanity has taught us. Thank you, Commander. As her ship left Haven Point, Jake stood at the window again watching the stars. Kirala came to stand beside him. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For seeing me as myself. Not as a princess. Not as an alien. Just as Kirala, Jake smiled. That's what friends do. Haven Point had changed. The Cultural Bridge program had expanded far beyond anyone's initial expectations. The station now hosted representatives from 47 different species, all learning from each other's cultures. The civilian sections had been expanded 3 times to accommodate everyone. Princess Kirala, now commonly known throughout the galaxy as the Bridge Princess, had become a symbol of what was possible when beings were allowed to grow beyond their origins. She split her time between Haven Point and the Zerathi homeworld, wearing different faces in different places but always remaining herself. When she was with humans, she went by Kira. She wore casual clothing. She played pool with Pete, who had become one of her closest friends. She ate terrible cafeteria food and complained about it just like everyone else. She was just another person on the station, When she returned to her people, she wore traditional royal garments. She performed her ceremonial duties. She attended formal councils and advised her mother on matters of state. But even there, she spoke about change, about adaptation, about the importance of questioning old assumptions. Not everyone in the Zirathi Empire accepted her message. The conservative factions called her corrupted. They said she had been poisoned by human ideas. They argued that she was a threat to traditional Zirathi values. Some openly said she should never be allowed to become queen. But younger Zirathi listened, those who had never risen high in the rigid caste system, those who had watched their civilization stagnate while other species grew and adapted, those who wanted something more than endless repetition of the old ways. Small reforms began appearing in various Zirathi colonies. Some allowed workers to change professions. Others created councils where lower castes could voice opinions. It was slow, painfully slow, but it was progress. Kira had published 3 books on intercultural philosophy. The first combined Zirathi tradition with human adaptability. The second explored how different species could learn from each other without losing their identities. The third was about the courage required to change when change feels impossible. Her work was now required reading in diplomatic academies across the coalition. Young diplomats from dozens of species studied her ideas. Some came to Haven Point hoping to meet her. She always made time for them. Jake Morrison had eventually left active diplomatic service. It turned out that being too honest, too unconventional, and too impatient with political theater didn't lead to promotions. But he didn't mind. He had found something better. He now taught at Earth's Interspecies Academy, training young humans and an increasing number of alien students in practical intercultural relations. His classes were always full. Students appreciated his straightforward approach and real-world experience. His first lesson every semester was always the same. He would stand in front of his new students and say, "Aliens aren't puzzles to be solved. They're people with different perspectives. Treat them accordingly and you'll figure out the rest as you go." Simple, direct, very Jake. He and Kira remained close friends. They met regularly, sometimes formally as part of her official duties, sometimes informally over terrible coffee that she still pretended to enjoy. She teased him about his inability to understand Zirathi humor. He countered by introducing her to increasingly bizarre human foods. Today was one of their informal meetings. They sat in the same cafeteria where Kira had first learned to use the food printer 5 years ago. She was eating something called a burrito, which she had decided was the perfect food because it was both messy and delicious. "I spoke with my mother yesterday," Kira said between bites. "She's planning to step down in 10 years. Jake looked surprised. "Zirathi queens don't step down. They rule until they die. They didn't, past tense. But things are changing. Slowly, but changing. My mother believes I'll be a better queen if I inherit her memories while she's still alive to help me process them. To help me maintain my own identity even with 800 years of genetic memories in my head." "Are you scared?" Jake asked. "Terrified," Kira admitted. "Those memories will be overwhelming. They'll try to shape how I think, how I make decisions. But I'm stronger now than I was 5 years ago. I know who I am. I know what I believe. I think I can hold on to that even when my mother's memories try to change me." "You will," Jake said with confidence. "You're the toughest person I know." "Zirathi are human." Kira clicked her mandibles in pleasure. The Zirathi laugh that humans had learned to recognize. "Thank you, friend." Dr. Lisa Chen joined them, carrying her own tray of food. She had been promoted to head of xenobiology at Haven Point. She was writing a book about the Cultural Bridge program and its impact on galactic relations. "Did you hear the news?" Lisa asked excitedly. 3 more species just approved cultural bridge programs. That brings the total to 28 species participating. 28? Kira looked amazed. "When we started, it was just humans and Zirathi." "Your example inspired them," Lisa said. "Young individuals from rigid societies are coming to learn from more adaptive cultures. They're not abandoning their heritage. They're finding new ways to express it, just like you did." Jake felt a sense of pride. 5 years ago, he had made a choice to speak honestly, to reject the easy diplomatic answer. He had risked his career to stand up for what he believed was right. And look what it had led to. Change. Real, meaningful change across the galaxy. Later that week, Kira was scheduled as a guest lecturer in Jake's class. The students were excited. They had all read her books. Many had questions. Jake introduced her simply. This is Kira. She's a friend, a scholar, and the galaxy's first cultural bridge. More importantly, she's someone who had the courage to become herself rather than what everyone expected her to be. The students asked many questions about Zarathi culture, about the challenges of existing between two worlds, about how to handle resistance to change. Kira answered them all honestly, sharing both her successes and her struggles. One young human student raised his hand. Princess Kira, what was the hardest part of learning to think like a human? Kira thought for a moment. I don't think I learned to think like a human. I learned to think for myself. That was the hard part. In my culture, we inherit patterns of thought from our mothers. We follow traditions established thousands of years ago. The idea that I could question those patterns, that I could choose my own beliefs, was both frightening and liberating. Another student, this one from a species called the Voltari, asked, Do you regret it? Challenging your culture's traditions? No, Kira said firmly. Change is uncomfortable. Many of my people hate me for what I represent, but I've also seen young Zarathi start to question, start to imagine different possibilities. I've seen tiny cracks appear in a system that seemed unbreakable. Change takes time, but it's happening, and that makes all the difficulty worthwhile. At the end of the lecture, Jake stood with Kira as students filed out. Some stopped to thank her. Others had more questions. She made time for all of them. When the last student left, Kira turned to Jake. Do you remember the first day we met? You told Ambassador Rodriguez that humans weren't going to change who they were, to accommodate Zarathi expectations. You said I needed to see the real humans, not some polite performance. I remember, Jake said. Carlos nearly had a heart attack. Kira clicked in amusement. That honesty saved me. If you had shown me a polite, diplomatic version of humanity, I would have learned nothing. I would have gone home unchanged. But you showed me chaos. Arguments, improvisation, people doing things their own way without waiting for permission. That's what I needed to see. You gave me permission to be imperfect, to make mistakes, to choose my own path even when it was hard. That's the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. Jake felt uncomfortable with the praise. I didn't do anything special. I just told the truth. The truth delivered with courage is always special, Kira replied. That's what humanity taught me. That's what my people are finally learning. She looked out the window at the stars beyond Haven Point. My mother told me something interesting. She said that when she was young, she tried to change our empire. She failed because she was alone. But I won't be alone. I'll have the memories of her attempts, yes, but I'll also have my own experiences, my own friends, my own understanding of what's possible. And when I eventually pass my memories to my daughter, she'll inherit all of it. Not just the rigid traditions of countless queens, but also this moment, this understanding that change is possible, that tradition and adaptation can coexist, that individuals have value beyond their assigned roles. Jake understood. This was bigger than one princess. This was about changing the genetic memory that would be passed down through generations. It was about introducing new ideas into a system that had been locked in place for thousands of years. It would take time. Generations, maybe. But the crack in the foundation was there now, and cracks had a way of spreading. A few months later, Jake received a message from Queen Velshara. It was unusual for her to contact him directly. He opened the communication with some concern. The Queen's image appeared. She looked older somehow, though that might have been his imagination. Zarathi aged slowly. Commander Morrison, she said, I wanted to inform you that I have officially designated Kirala as my heir. This is not unusual. What is unusual is that I have also announced my intention to step down while I am still alive, so I can guide her through the memory inheritance process. The conservative factions are outraged. They call it another corruption of tradition, but the younger generations support the decision. Times are changing, Commander, slowly but changing. She paused, then continued. I wanted to thank you. 5 years ago, you shocked me with your answer. You refused to accept my daughter because you said acceptance wasn't yours to give. At the time, I thought I understood. But only now do I truly grasp what you meant. You showed me that the problem wasn't whether humans would accept Kirala. The problem was that I was still thinking in terms of hierarchies and permissions. I was asking you to validate my daughter's existence because that's how Zarathi culture works. But you reminded me that individuals don't need validation from authority to have worth. That lesson has spread beyond my daughter. Young Zerathi are starting to question whether they need permission to pursue their interests, to express their opinions, to be who they are. It's uncomfortable for many, but it's necessary. Jake didn't know what to say. Finally, he settled on, "Your Majesty, you made this happen. You had the courage to send your daughter away, not knowing if she would come back changed. You risked everything for the chance that she might learn something that could help your people. That took more courage than anything I did." Velshara's mandibles clicked softly. "Perhaps we both showed courage, Commander. Different kinds, but equally necessary. Thank you for everything." The message ended. Jake sat in his small office thinking about how strange life was. 5 years ago, he was just a diplomat trying to do his job. Now he was somehow part of a movement that was changing an ancient civilization, but he also knew he hadn't done it alone. Kira had done the hard work. Queen Velshara had taken the initial risk. Dr. Chen had provided crucial understanding. Pete and Kate and Danny and countless others had shown Kira what it meant to be treated as an equal. Change was never the work of one person. It was the work of many people, each making small choices that added up to something bigger. That evening, Jake met Kira for their regular coffee. She was in a good mood, excited about her upcoming trip to a new Zerathi colony that was experimenting with educational reforms. "They're letting students choose their own subjects," she explained enthusiastically. "It's a small thing, but it's huge for us. For the first time, young Zerathi will get to explore their interests rather than just learning what their caste requires." "That's amazing," Jake said sincerely. "It is. And it's happening because you taught me that change is possible. That adaptation isn't weakness. That chaos and order can coexist," Jake smiled. "I didn't teach you anything. You figured it out yourself. I just gave you the space to do it." Kira reached across the table and touched his hand briefly with one of hers. A gesture of friendship that would have been unthinkable 5 years ago. "Thank you, friend, for everything." Jake looked at the Zerathi princess who had become one of his closest friends. She had traveled so far, not just in distance but in understanding. She had challenged everything she was raised to believe. She had faced resistance and criticism and doubt, but she had never given up. And now she was going to become a queen, not the kind of queen her people had known for thousands of years, but a new kind, a queen who questioned, who adapted, who believed her people could change without losing themselves. It would be difficult. There would be setbacks. Progress would be slow, but it would happen, because that's what humans had taught the galaxy. That change is always possible. That growth never stops. That the future doesn't have to look like the past. All it takes is the courage to try. And maybe, just maybe, a friend who believes in you enough to let you figure things out for yourself.